Alright, well, I said I was going to do pages 11 through 17, but unfortunately I could only get to page 15, and that was nearly take me 20 minutes to get through. So I'm going to go a little bit faster with this one and hopefully be able to do 12 pages. I might start skipping a little bit, but one of the first things I wanted to talk about is why this particular episode is so important. This is where we finally get to see an uncanny encounter with the wild boar. And one of the things I wanted to show you, and because I'm sitting up, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to see this time, is there's a wild boar at the very beginning of Annihilation. And this is the thing that they encounter on page 15 and 16, right? Because they said, the biologist says that they see all kinds of normal things. For example, the birds sang as they should. The deer took flight. That means they ran. That doesn't mean they were literally flying in the air like a reindeer in a movie. No, that just means they ran away. When they saw you, oh my God, they're going to run away, right? They took flight. They ran away. The white tails, exclamation points against the green. Raccoons, regular. As a group, we almost felt giddy, like, huh, to be free after so many confining months of training and preparation. Here's an example of what she calls the transitional environment, right? While we were in that corridor in the Southern Reach, in that transitional space. Transitional space means that they're about to go from one place that's extremely confined and extremely controlled to a place that appears to be free, appears to be completely free of human interaction and human control, which is the complete opposite, right? So they've been in a confined space, but now they're in this open area. Wow. So they must have really felt like nothing could touch us. We were neither what we had been, nor what we would become once we reached our destination. What is their destination? She never specified one. So that's interesting that she would say that. What is their destination? By the way, I call this the wild boar encounter. Yes, the wild boar encounter. I love this episode. It's definitely one worth quoting if you're going to talk about how the uncanny exists in this novel. One of the things that's very interesting is that the creatures they encounter are very, very much connected to nature, right? And so, let's stop a second and think about what a wild boar is. A wild boar is a wild pig. And usually, wild pigs, if they feel threatened, they will come and charge you and attack you. They will not wait. They will not hesitate. They're not going to ask you questions. They're not going to second guess themselves. They're just going to come charging at you like a raging bull. Boom! Right? That's what they do. That's their instinct. That's what you would normally expect of a boar. So, let's see what actually happens when they encounter this boar. So, the day before we arrived at camp, this mood was briefly shattered by the appearance of an enormous wild boar some distance ahead of us on the trail. It was so far from us that even with our binoculars, we could barely identify it at first. But despite poor eyesight, wild pigs have prodigious powers of smell. That means they can smell things from a million miles away. You sweating, they can smell the droplets. Gross. You better take a shower, otherwise they're going to know where you are. And it began charging us from 100 yards away. By the way, 100 yards away is not that far. So that's actually really scary. That would be like, from one end of one room to another. So if you have a pretty small room, that's about 100 feet away. That's really, really close. Thundering down the trail toward us. Yet, and there's that uncanny word, yet, we still had time to think about what we might do and draw our long knives, and in the surveyor's case, her assault rifle. Whoa. Okay, so you're going to bring knives to a gun party? Let's see who does better on that one. Bullets would probably stop a 700-pound pig, or perhaps not. I think it will. We did not feel confident taking our attention from the board to untie the containers of handguns from our gear. So this is so quick and so fast, they didn't even have time to react. So they're just going with their gut instinct. Gut instinct is something that is something very important for timed exams as well, right? You can't just revise, revise, revise. You're going to have to stick with what you got and then do the best with what you have. So keep that in mind. Sometimes your gut instinct is your best friend when it comes to timed writing. Okay. There was no time to prepare hypnotic suggestion. All she said was, don't get close to it. Don't let it touch you. I'm pretty sure they know that answer. While the board continued to charge, the anthropologist was giggling a bit how nervously. Oh, God, it's a freaking pig. And the absurdity of experiencing an emergency situation that was taking long to develop. What? Only the surveyor had taken direct action. Dropped to one knee to get a better shot. Our orders included the helpful directive to kill only if you felt that you are being under threat of being killed. Excuse me. To kill only if you are under threat of being killed. So, unless if something is going to kill you, don't attack it. Let it be. I was continuing to watch through the binoculars. As the boar came closer, its face became stranger and stranger. Let's pause there. The phrase stranger and stranger. Now it's going to become more uncanny. What makes it so uncanny? We're about to find out. This would be the first thing that you want to requote. Its features were somehow contorted as if the beast was dealing with an extreme of inner torment. Okay, let's stop there. We're going to requote something related to contorted. So contorted means that the face is like, "Rrr." It's not just like, it's a, it looks odd, right? There's something not right about it. And the beast was dealing with an extreme of inner torment. That means like it's torturing itself inside of its mind. But there's one more phrase that I want to requote. As if. As if. Now, in modern day language, we'll be like, as if. Is that really what you want to say? As if that's really what you want to say. In this case, as if always in this novel indicates the uncanny. It is very similar to the word and yet. And yet it could be, but it probably wasn't. As if it could have been this, but it is actually that. So it's actually used, and you could even in your mind or in your um, direct quote add in the word but, as if but the beast was dealing with an extreme of inner torment. Nothing about its muzzle or broad long face looked at all extraordinary. By the way, I did that on purpose. And yet, I had the startling impression of some presence in the way its gaze seemed turned inward and its head willfully pulled to the left, as if there were an invisible bridle. All right, there's a lot going on here. So, nothing about it seemed at all extraordinary. Instead of calling it extraordinary, I did it on purpose. Extraordinary. Something that is unnatural about it. According to the biologist, nothing seemed odd about it except, and yet. There's that phrase, and yet again. And yet, here's the uncanny part. The startling impression. It's not just any kind of impression. It's a weird, scary, unfamiliar impression of some presence. You have to requote this word presence. It's in italics. You have to requote this word. Vandermeer is giving you a gimme right here. The presence. The presence. And again, presence isn't just being there, right? It's not just being there. It's the sort of feeling that you get when someone's there. So, for example, you probably all have experienced this now with peer review. When someone does not present their work, when someone does not do their work, it suddenly throws off the machine, right? It throws off how things are supposed to be. So this presence is very important. Its gaze seemed turned inward, which is very odd. That means it's like self-consciously thinking about itself. That's always thinking about itself rather than its target, which is supposed to be them, right? It's supposed to be charging them, but she's thinking in her head, well, he's going like this, but he's thinking about himself more, it seems like, than us as a target. And its head willfully pulled to the left, as if it were an invisible bridle. So a bridle is when you use things on a horse to, go like this to and go, yeah, yeah, yeah. So you're controlling it. It's a symbol of control, right? So there's an invisible bridle because it's pushing itself to the left. No one knows exactly why. That's really weird. When something charges you, it doesn't go to the left or to the right. It goes straight head on, right? It would be like doing a headbutt, but then you decide to put it to your head to the left like that. Well, that would be kind of odd. A kind of electricity sparked in its eyes. Ooh, an electricity. What what does Vandermeer, the biologist, mean by a kind of electricity? What is that referring to? I could not credit as real. This is very important. The word real and electricity would be two words that I would re-quote. Because electricity, in this case, means that it's got a spark in their eyes, something like it's lighting up, as if it had logic, reasoning, which is something that humans have, not something animals are supposed to have. And I cannot credit it as real. Again, when you think of a boar, you don't think of the spark in its eyes that might show logic, reasoning, and even pain. You think of it as, well, it's charging me. It should not have this sort of electricity in its eyes other than it wants to kill you. I thought instead it must be a byproduct of my now slightly shaky hand on the binoculars, but that is certainly not the case. Whatever was consuming the boar also soon consumed its desire to charge, and this is where things get really weird. Okay, so if something's coming at you head on, does it mysteriously go straight at you and then go like this, stop, then maybe go this way or that way? No, it comes straight at you, hit you, right? That's what it's supposed to do. A missile doesn't go straight and then go to the right or the left. That's not what you want it to do. You want it to hit head on, right? It veered abruptly leftward with what I can only describe as a great cry of anguish. Ah! Anguish means like torture or feelings of hurt, right? Like something's hurt, extremely hurt. You'll be like, ah! So it'd be like a boar coming. Yeah, it's not very normal, right? This is not something you would expect any human, let alone an animal like this, to do. By the time we reached the spot, the boar was gone, leaving behind a thoroughly trashed trail. So what on earth was that? Why would it suddenly go after them and then go right to the left? That makes absolutely no sense. So it's very uncanny, right? This boar is very uncanny. It charges like a regular boar. It has a spark in its eyes like a regular boar. But what it does and how it does it is completely inexplicable. You wouldn't understand it. It's very hard to understand. So it's very odd. Again, she says, for several hours afterwards, and I added that word afterwards. This is on the top of page 17. For several hours afterwards, my thoughts turned inward, toward explanations for what I had seen. Parasites of a neurological nature. I was searching for entirely rational biological theories. How could this be? Is there any way biologically this could be possible that could Change a board? Then after a time the board faded in the backdrop like all else. We had passed on our way from the border, and I was staring into the future again. So she kind of just gives up on it, meaning she could not explain it away. You can't just say, well, it was just this way, it was just that, it was just this, it was just that. In this case, no. What happened was extremely uncanny and very unsettling, right? Because it's something completely different and new that she never thought she'd ever see. So, the next day after this is very important because at the bottom of page 17, she says they felt a new tension, meaning things were already kind of dicey in the beginning, but things are getting worse now. And so, when we all returned to the tower, all four of us, sunlight came down, and then she says, through the moss and leaves, created arpeggios of light on the flat surface of the entrance. It remained unremarkable, inert, in no way ominous. And yet, it took an active will to stand there, staring at the entry point. Why is this important? Again, we're talking about the uncanny here. And in this case, what makes it so uncanny is the fact that at the entrance, it seems so unremarkable and so normal. And yet, here's the uncanny part, it took an active will to stand there staring at the entry point. In other words, she sees it as nothing odd or ominous or scary, but at the same time, it sort of is. It's very powerful. It has the power to stop you from going inside because you're like, wow, what is this thing? I'm not sure I want to go in there. But like people who go on a roller coaster for the first time or haven't been on one in a long time, sometimes people just overcome their fears and decide to go in. So, I'm going to kind of skip through a lot of this. And then at the bottom of page 19, I'm going to look at the bottom of page 19. Okay, bottom of page 19. With a strange smirk, almost as if judging us, the surveyor descended until we could only see her face framed in the gloom below. And then not even that. Okay. So the surveyor is the first one to go inside. And she's not too happy about that. She left an empty space that was shocking to me. As if, there's that uncanny phrase again, the reverse had actually happened. As if a face had suddenly floated into view out of the darkness. Now, later on, we find out that this is probably true. Maybe what she had seen is something completely different than what she's actually experiencing. Very scary. I gasped, which drew a stare from the psychologist. Why is the psychologist staring at her? Does she think she's insane? Well, I don't know, but it certainly could contribute to the idea of that. Just like going to the lighthouse behind me. No, just kidding. It's not a lighthouse. You just think it is, but no, it's not. Okay. Is everything okay? The psychologist called out to the surveyor. Actually, I should rephrase that. Is everything okay? Everything had been fine just a second before. Why would anything be different now? Alright. So, I'm going to skip ahead again. Not worry too much about this. And again, the things that are real and unreal are extremely difficult because on page 21, she talks about the sort of disconnect with the lighthouse and the tower, right, and how they connect to one another. And she expresses a kind of relief when they had seen the lighthouse. In other words, it kind of helped her ground in what is canny and uncanny, right? Again, tower, the tunnel, and again on page 22, she calls it the building. She calls it many different names, but the idea is that it's the uncanny place, whereas the lighthouse is the thing that's familiar. It's on the map. It's a thing that's easily distinguishable and can remind you of what you were like in the past. Now, on page 22 to 23, something very important about the tower and how she describes it. This is going to be her first time that she talks about the fact that she was married. What? So, at about shoulder height, and this is the top of page 23. Perhaps 5 feet, clinging to the inner wall of the tower, I saw what I first took to be dimly sparkling green vines progressing down into the darkness. I had a sudden absurd memory, not just any kind of memory, an absurd memory of the floral wallpaper treatment that had lined the bathroom of my house when I had shared it with my husband. What? Are you playing me? This person was married and finally just says that now? I thought she was single. And so that's when she says that as she stares, the vines resolve further, and then she finally sees words. What? And in the next paragraph, here we go. Here's something related to the theme of control and to the theme of sort of freedom of choice. Hold the light, I said. Blood was rushing through my head again, a roaring confusion in my ears. This is something you definitely can requote. It was an act of supreme control. So there's a few words here that stand out to me. The word act, I would requote. The word supreme, and control. So act is very important, right? When you need to make a decision on something, when you make a choice, you act on it, right? So clearly this is going to be an act. But it's not just any kind of control, it's supreme or total control. It's total in that she has complete control and power to walk those few paces. So, something's going on here. She clearly wants to go in, but at the same time, it's really hard to do because it's so uncanny, so scary. So, you could talk about this in terms of the uncanny as well as talking about it in sort of freedom and power and control. And so, let's scroll down to the bottom of page 23, in which we finally see the writing on the wall. Again, the term writing on the wall means that you see things that basically are about to tell you something that's happening, usually the end of something, right? It's interesting that early on in this novel, we see the writing on the wall, which, again, is supposed to indicate the end. So perhaps this is going to play an essential role throughout the novel, and it's definitely a motif. So these sort of cryptic words are very important to the end of the novel. So let's read them out loud. This is where things get scary, so ominous, so weird and odd. Where lies the strangling fruit that came from the hand of the sinner? I shall bring forth the seeds of the dead. Seeds of the dead! To share with the worms. So let's pause there. This sort of phrase, and I like that Vandermeer has done this, he's trying to show that a lot of this is taken from Gothic literature. How do I know this? Words like strangling fruit, sinner, seeds of the dead, and worms. So why is that important? In European literature, the idea of worms is that they're supposed to, once you're dead, it's supposed to crawl inside your body and take over your body, right? They can eat you. They can do a lot of things to your dead bones. So I'm sorry for those of you who are nervous about your body after you die. It's not a pretty picture. So the idea is that this has some context in terms of being scary. It's not meant to be like, oh, well, you know what? It's just a weird thing. No, this is supposed to be scary. It's supposed to scare the reader. Then the darkness took it. That means it took out the rest of the words. Words? Words? The anthropologist said, like, what? mean words? Where'd that come from? Yes, words. What are they made of? The surveyor asked. Do they need to be made of anything? The fact that we even got words here should scare you. Uh, where lies the strangling fruit became bathed in shadow and in light, as if a battle raged for its meaning. So, where lies the strangling fruit in terms of shadow and light means that it could be good and it could be bad. Give me a moment. I need to get closer. Did I? Yes. I needed to get closer. What are they made of? And that's when she takes a physical sample because it helped her fight the compulsion to keep reading, to descend into greater darkness, and to keep descending until I had read all there was to read. In other words, she purposely distracts herself, which is another act of supreme control, right? So in this case, the biologist, even at the end of chapter 1, is already showing that she has a lot of control over the situation to an extent, right? To an extent. To the extent that she can stop herself, but barely, right? It's not too strong at the moment, but it's about to get a lot stronger. All right, so I'm going to go to page 25, and this is what I call the infection episode. So this is where she's going to change. This is a turning point in the novel, where so far as she's not sure if she has supreme control over herself, golden nodules capped the fingers of these hands. I leaned in closer, like a fool, like someone who had not spent months of survival training or ever studied biology, because she's being so objective. But again, the idea is that it's so new, so uncanny that she has this sort of craving. Remember, she mentions the craving. She has a craving for curiosity. Someone tricked into thinking that words should be read. So who's controlling that? Questions, questions. I was unlucky, or was I lucky? What? Triggered by a disturbance in the flow of air, excuse me. A nodule in the W chose that moment to burst open and a tiny spray of golden spores spewed out. Uh-oh, COVID-19. The the spray is there. The droplet is there. I pulled back, but it's too late. I thought I had felt something enter my nose, experienced a pinprick of escalation. In the smell of rotting honey. Uh-oh, rotting honey is never a good sign, let me tell you. And then, unnerved, I stepped back even further, and then she says, wait, it's some sort of fungi, I said finally. The letters are made from fruiting bodies, meaning that whatever's creating this is definitely actually physical creatures. It's not just like words on a wall that you could spray paint or that you could write. No, these are actually creatures that are forming these words. Words made of fungi. So scary. There's no recorded human language that uses this method of writing. And again, anthropologists are very concerned with humans and human evolution, including some of the linguistics. I have to laugh. No, there is no animal that communicates in this way, or if there were, I cannot recall its name, and never did. And here we go. This is where things get crazy. We should go back up, I said, and I'm skipping to page 27. So now in this next part, this is going to be the end of chapter 1, and this is where things get a little bit crazy. So stay tuned and watch more.